Modernizing Government Technology Act appears to be on its way to passage as soon as it can get onto the floor of the House and the Senate. Companies that sell to the federal government are already thinking about how the MGT Act will affect the way they serve their customers. Jeremy Wilcox is Managing Director of Federal Public Sector at Clear Edge Partners. Jeremy, thanks for coming on the program. It's great to see you. What do you see as the biggest result of the MGT Act when it finally gets through Congress?
Sure. And the Modernizing Government Technology Act is a piece of common sense legislation that should have really been passed in the Obama administration. If you think about it, it was passed unanimously by voice vote in the House and then kind of died out after the CBO scored it. Ultimately, based on our data and what our data is telling us, there's about a 25 to 35% opportunity for additional value and hard savings that can come from IT investment planning. And ultimately, that is about a $20 to $30 billion opportunity for savings and added value for government negotiators and buyers, but also for American taxpayers.
So there's two sides to this. There is the government side who's going to save all that money. There's the vendor side who is thinking maybe we're not going to see all the money that we're used to seeing. If you're in the space where you live, which is on the vendor side, how do you look at the MGT Act and look for opportunity?
It's a great question, Francis. The MGT Act creates a working capital fund that enables flexibility that gets us out of the traditional status quo of continuing resolutions where you have long-term investments in strategic technologies in a very short budget window where you have spending between right now and the end of September. Mm-hmm. So it kind of eliminates, in a lot of ways, the status quo prevails. And so if you think about long-term investments being made where agencies will now have flexibility of identifying savings from across all of their investments, parking it in a capital fund that can then be used over 3 years without having to be earmarked for specific technology, really gives suppliers and vendors the opportunity to present innovative next-generation technology solutions that are outside of the current appropriations process. And ultimately, there's going to be winners that, if they capitalize on that opportunity, they're going to come out ahead.
It sounds like there will also be an opportunity for the vendor community to present a lot more strategic solutions. I mean, if you can present something that a company or an agency knows they'll be able to execute over multiple years where they haven't been able to in the past, that strikes me as a tremendous breakthrough to be able to approach these things more strategically.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, if you think about current technologies or let's say a software as a service solution being proposed, it makes no sense to have a contract where you have a base year with multiple single-year options. If you can come in and present a 3, 5, 8-year plan as agencies move to platforms and really fully utilize the value from those new technologies, then there's a lot that can be done.
Do you think that this will push agencies a lot faster and a lot more aggressively toward blank as a service solution, toward platforms away from buying boxes and licenses and so on?
Well, I think that's the temptation with this act, because if you read the details from the previous act that passed the House, and assuming that language continues in the latest version that goes to the floor, what we see is a big push that kind of codifies moving towards FedRAMP, right? And it kind of brings together modernization and cloud. So there's that tendency to say, well, cloud is modernization, cloud is the latest and greatest. Mm-hmm. So yes, there's definitely going to be a push to move towards that. I think the challenge we're seeing in the private sector and as well as in the government is being able to purchase software as a service, not just as software, but as a service. Mm-hmm. So understanding the difference between perpetual rights and subscription-based models. Going to the cloud does not have to be as a service, right? So going to the cloud, the as-a-service model is not necessarily the only way to modernize technology.
Any unintended consequences here? Anything that we could be looking back a year from now and saying, oh, we didn't expect this to happen as much, or we didn't expect this to happen at all, or we got something we weren't expecting?
Well, to be honest, this bill is so common sense from folks in industry and in government. If you talk to everybody, I don't see who would be opposed to this. Unintended consequences. Look, it hits the nail on the head from a leverage perspective with deals shifting leverage back to government. From a timing, and the lack of uncertainty with funding at the end of the year, and with credible alternatives, Plan Bs, the government's just going to get a much better deal. However, I will say that, again, going back to modernization and cloud, right? Going all in with the cloud is not necessarily going to be the best strategy for every investment. So I think it's going to take a discerning eye to determine, which technologies to take to the cloud, which ones can be modernized on-prem, and which ones should be hybrid, models.
Jeremy Wilcox, thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you, Francis.